I'm Michael Damiani, and I have finished Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
I'm Matt Simmons, and I have beaten Xenoblade 3.
I am Stealth, and I have beaten Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
This is your final warning. Spoiler mode begins now.
Spoiler mode, final warning, spoiler mode, activated.
Hey everyone, welcome to the much anticipated edition of Spoiler Mode for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This is a big game. I anticipate this will be a big spoiler mode. I am joined by Matthew Simmons of Yo Video Games and Stealth. I couldn't think of two better people to join me. Also, because of the nature of this game and how busy you are, no one else at Easy Allies has finished the game yet. So it's like, I really wanted to do this, and it's like, gotta have this done. And also, I think it's been quite a bit enough time now that most people have had, you know, a fair shake to complete the game, or at least get far enough that they can enjoy this video. So yeah, I think I saw, what was it? I think I saw your tweet, Stealth, about how many hours you had put in. And that kept blowing me away because I thought I was taking my sweet time with the game. And then I was like, okay, all right, there's a whole other power level above me.
Because I jokingly kind of like, or like a while ago was like, oh, like, you know, he still posted how many hours he spent on Xenoblade 2, and I was like, those are rookie numbers, get him higher. And then but I seen you still, you went a whole hog on 3 already, so I was just like, yeah, 200 hours, go.
I have to say, it's just like every other installment. It's just so easy to get lost in these games, and like it's like an experience. You know what you're getting into when you sign up for these games, and I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly. But we're gonna start with some questions from our Easy Allies patrons. These first few are regarding the story, and I think that's the best place to start with this. After we finish the story questions, we'll dive into any other story topics that Simmons or Stealth want to get into, and then we have a few gameplay related questions, and we'll talk about, you know, the rest of the game, because spoiler modes are more than story. It's comprehensive. It's about everything. So our first questions comes from Pika Greg. Sorry, howdy. How do you feel about the quality of the writing in the side stories compared to those from other big JRPGs? It feels like the game sets a high standard, and they really took the extra mile making things interesting. I often found myself super overleveled just because the side stories were really fun and fleshed out the world a ton. Which colonies had your favorite side stories, or any side stories in mind that really called out to you? Love and respect. Now, the difficulty thing, let's save that for later, since that's a gameplay thing. Let's just focus on like the side stories writing and which ones maybe were your favorite and how it stacks up to others.
Yeah, I thought the side stories in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 were really, really good. So some of the best in any JRPG I've ever played. Particularly the hero quests are really good. They come with full voice acting, you know, and they flesh out the characters, and even just like the smaller characters in each of the colonies, there can be like quest sequences where you'll see the same characters again and again, and it's like, you know, it kind of just builds that world building atmosphere. I don't necessarily have a favorite colony, but really just, you know, the hero quests are great, and I forget their names, but you know, there's you know, a couple of mechanics who desert. You know, an Opon and just a mechanic, and you kind of follow them, you know, as they run around the world, and help them out, and kind of, you know, learn more about that environment as you help them out. So that was really great. But yeah, in general, like I feel like the side quest writing and just like how they've sequenced certain quests together is like leaps and bounds better than most JRPGs.
Yeah, I actually think this is the strongest part of Xenoblade 3. At least this is what Xenoblade 3 has over the other two Xenoblade games, like by a wide margin. Is the side quests in this game are significantly better, and more importantly, they feel more impactful and like connected to the overall storyline of the game. Xenoblade 1 and 2 had a lot of side quests, and some of them were really fun and funny. and what have you. But like they also felt more or less disjointed. Like they're part of the world, but like they're kind of just a lot of them are just fluff. Where this one, it feels like you do a side quest and it's like in service of something that's more directly tied to the main plot, especially with the heroes' ascension quest lines and stuff like that. Again, best of series. I'd be lying. Like I really like the Lost Colony, but I like that just more sort of from a visual aspect and how it ties to tie on a bit. But like I'd be lying if I said I wasn't the most intrigued by Colony Zero. And then there was that big painting you get, which sent my head spinning with all kinds of like, where did this art come from? I don't know if you've done that. You probably have, Mike.
Yeah.
You saw that artwork, and I'm like, that is not art from this game. It is not art from any character designer, but it does look suspiciously like some concept art that they had posted at one point, like that style. And I'm like, I wonder where this came from, because it's not it's not connected in any way, shape, or form to Xenoblade 1 or 2 or 3's world. And I'm like, there's something. I don't know. Like it might just been, oh, we had this cool art laying around the office and we wanted to use it, and that's probably more likely the truth. But I was just like, it was really interesting to see it. But anyways, I like that because there was this whole growth aspect to Colony Zero where like you pay Liz, I think his name was like Shill or something.
Oh yeah.
And you pay him a whole bunch of money to like upgrade the look of the colony, because the colony's inside a prison and you're basically retrofitting the prison to become like a base. And like the more you pay him, the more he adds to it. Although it mostly just looks like he just keeps adding like more and more junk to it. But I don't know. I kind of liked that aspect. I liked that it reminded me very much of kind of like a little bit of like Machines and near Automata, where it's just like these kids have, were raised to just be completely like machine soldiers, and then it's like they're slowly developing and growing into their human personalities. So Colony Zero was actually the most fun, and it was kind of like one of the last things I did, although it's kind of by design to be one of the last ones. But yeah, I'd probably Colony Zero. And again, like side quests are the highlight of this game, I would say. Like if you could point to one thing and say, what does 3 do better than every other game, it would probably be side quests and side content.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one other thing, especially with like the hero quests and the side stories with the main cast, are like most of them end with like an epic boss fight with a Mobius that you might not necessarily see in the main story, and some you do. And that just kind of adds to, how special the whole thing is.
Yeah, because again, like way more directly tied to the central plot.
Yeah, I agree with everything both of you said, and I appreciated them for that. My favorite part of the hero quest was also how almost all of them are optional as well, that you get, but they feel like they're very integral. Like some of them, it's like, why would this not be required? I feel like this is like kind of essential information for fully appreciating the world. But I loved, this ties a little bit into design as well, but I loved how they enticed you to keep exploring the world, and if you put in the time, you got more lore behind that region of the world and those side characters as well. And it's actually a very good blueprint template I hope other games look to. Breath of the Wild sequel, sorry, Tears of the Kingdom. I keep forgetting to call it that now. Yeah, it's got a name. I can't call it that anymore. Would love to see this type of template used in future open world games or just like large RPG games, because it feels like a meaningful way to interact with the world and to do world building and just lore in general, rather than like it being so linear and like doled out in like long cutscenes after you beat like a major boss. It's like, no, you get out of this what you put into it. And also, yeah, like you get like the ascension stuff, like some like we go up to rank 20, just get more powerful, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But yes, it does in general make your characters more powerful. So like it's one way to go about leveling up in an alternative way, rather than just like, the old-fashioned grinding. Like I've always liked that about Xenoblade games, is they've given you a lot of different ways to progress in your characters. So That's also important to me, but also, yeah, the stories in some of them, like, I think there's a specific question about one later, so I don't want to mention that one just yet, but I think it was the Teach one. It was either the original or the Ascension, where the person who was basically wanted to call him out for like a duel, wanted him to kill him, basically wanted suicide by cop style, whatever, like really wanted him to to fight him, and like it was almost like it felt like codec conversations when he was calling him. It felt like Gray Fox a little bit, like, I want you to hurt me more. It's like, oh, okay, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even in other quests, you kind of like hear about how legendary Teach is, like you kind of like pick up those pieces from other quests, so that kind of just adds to it.
Yeah, and there's a crazy thing where it's like it's not part of his Ascension quest, but if you've done all of Colony 11 stuff and have done Teach stuff, you can actually there's like added stuff if you take him over there, because there is like basically the Dirty Dozen Suicide Squad colony, and Teach has that sort of, that backstory that's very kind of like there's like a weird similarity there. But if you actually take those two together, they actually do have an interaction with the Shira and Teach. So I'm like, they even add layers on top of layers beyond the Ascension quests for some stuff. So
yeah, it's pretty impressive. And again, to speak to the writing, I felt like just in general the writing in this game was pretty good. I felt like especially the main characters, but also like the heroes as well. Their interactions felt a little less tropey to me. I don't know. Like, I don't want to say they were completely down to earth, but it felt like they were a little bit more natural in the way they bonded together, especially the core cast, in terms of like how they are very antagonistic against each other, like having to overcome that, barrier of where two sides have been at war with each other and we're going to be very distrustful of each other for a long time.
I think you're seeing a really, with 3, because I mean, a lot of the localization names are, I think a lot of them are the same, but I think you're seeing a lot more of what happens when they have way more time to localize, and localize is more than translating, and a lot of people don't get this, because there's a lot of like expressions and sayings and the way characters like Lance and Uni in particular react. You can really tell that they had time to sit there, look at the overall grand storyline of the game and go, how do we make this sound more natural in English, not translated? We could translate it and you would get I think a lot of tropes kind of come from just like raw, like, we don't have time, we're translating it basically like as directly as we can, but you don't get that sort of like the slang. And I'm not talking about like the made up slang for the game, but like there's like actual English, British slang or whatever that's in there, and it reminded me a lot of how Final Fantasy 7 remakes localization on that game was really obviously heavily involved. So characters are spouting dialogue that sounds like natural English conversation, rather than just here's a conversation written and performed in Japanese, and we kind of do like a direct translation of it. So I noticed that a lot with like Lance and Uni in particular, and even the other characters, where it's like I think we're seeing the effects of like this game had a lot more time, and I like I told you, where it's like the game was done in February because that's when it was sent to every ratings board and around the world. And I can tell you straight up, like when they stopped recording music for it, like there's even to the day you can find it. So, and during the recording of the music, they even said it was nice this time because we actually had finished footage to record music to. A lot of times it's just like I get a storyboard or a description of a scene, and then I write music to that. But like a lot of the music was recorded to full cutscenes, or nearly finished cutscenes this time. So I'm like, this game had a lot of time in the oven before they had to like pump it out. And I think you're seeing how beneficial that can be to localizing. And that's why I think a lot of the dialogue comes off a lot more natural this time.
Yeah. And one other thing I thought was impressive, and this is something I kind of like gauge in a lot of JRPGs. It's like, how often, like if you're in a town, how often does the NPC dialogue refresh? Like, does it stay the exact same the whole game? Like, if you go back to a town like 30 hours later, and I found like there's a lot of like dialogue that changes with just like NPCs that don't even have side quests.
Yeah.
Like maybe 4 or 5 times in the game. You know, if you come back, if you do a quest, and then maybe the dialogue changes for everybody, and that's for like 10 colonies. So I thought that was like just super impressive.
Yeah, I was actually taken aback by how much of that they were doing. I was like, someone had to like keep track of all of this and keep updating this dialogue. And I was like, and these are small secondary characters. They're like, as you said, and I was just like, goes a long way. Like they as you said, Simmons, having that extra time. I think that these are the finer details that they could like kind of like massage a bit to like improve the overall storytelling experience.
Yeah. I think though there is a bit of a reason for that, and someone I read this online and it was pointed out, and I was like, it actually became kind of true. This game is kind of like, in a lot of ways, takes the concept of something like X. Yeah, I'm bringing up X, where, you know, if you look at how Xenoblade X did its world and side quests, it's actually very similar. This is basically like a more realized, story-driven version of that game, because in that game, it's like, here's the setup, here's the premise, and sort of everything around New LA and the quest lines around New LA is sort of built around this whole, we got to build up our city and build up our survival, and everything's sort of like based around that. New LA kind of ends up in a weird way being like one giant colony. So that happens, and I think it's also a little bit because of how the story in this game is, where there's not a ton of twists, and I personally don't feel there's not a lot of twists and turns to the overall major narrative. So that means they don't have to worry so much about like they can write like all these advanced dialogue stages in the colonies, because like in the game's life, it's like, here's what happens is that a colony would care about. Like, they exist, their flame clock's destroyed, and then there's sort of like the build up to like the heroes are going to go take down the bad guy in Origin. There's, you know, it's pretty much just that. Like, they don't, like, they can not worry about, does dialogue not make sense, you know, if this has gone on in the world or this has changed in the world. It's like the dynamics of like, say, like the villains and their plot, they don't really change much in the game at all.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much like, after you break a colony's flame clock, it's like, okay, now the colony has to go into like, how do I survive mode, and they can just build from there and not worry about, you know, any other major world events happening that would, you know, make it weird and irrelevant, you know, for this colony to be acting or reacting this way or that way. So I think part of it is like, okay, yeah, like it helps when your narrative is built out like this, you know, where like the main villain doesn't like suddenly like change, or like there's like this major, you know, like Kefka turning the world, you know, into a whole different world map in Final Fantasy 6. Like, there's nothing like crazy like that, where you would have to worry about like, does this make sense for NPC dialogue, you know, to have dialogue like this at this point in the game. So I guess it's kind of like one reason I can see why this seemed to work out so well.
I have another question from Analog Vernacular. There's been talk from the developers about this game bringing an end to the Klaus story. Klaus story, sorry. I said Klaus. Do you feel like this game feels like a conclusion to this ongoing series narrative? I feel like there are too many loose ends for this to be complete, but I want to know your thoughts.
I mean, I feel like if they wanted it to be, they could just write another different story completely, and that'd be fine. But I mean, you know, there are definitely some loose ends that maybe they'll clear up in the DLC. I don't know. You know, the worlds were apart, then they came together, then they came apart again. But what if they come back together again? You know, they could probably write a story like that if they wanted to, and that would involve, you know, him. Or they could just do something completely different. It's really up to them and how they want to do it. But I did feel a sense of conclusion to this trilogy, where it's like, if they want to go with completely new characters and everything, like I'd be cool with that. Or if they maybe want to like revisit this world, like and Klaus again, I'd be cool with that too. But you know, I feel like they kind of left the door open to do whatever they want.
I'd say I'd have to put a pin in this question because the expansion pass is coming.
Yeah.
But more to the point of that expansion pass is the imagery they use. Because when they announced, right when 2 came out, that they were doing an expansion pass to 2, they showed an image of the Towers of Torna. And even though we may or may not have necessarily guessed that that was Torna, if you played the game, there's like some very brief cutscenes, flashbacks, that let you know it's Torna. So if you were paying really close attention to 2 and you saw that image that came out the day the game came out or even before the game came out, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is definitely going to be about this. So the image for Xenoblade 3 is the main weapons of all 3 protagonists of each Xenoblade game. So to me, it seems like a very pointed, direct thing where it's like, this DLC is going to be obviously very fan servicey, but it's going to involve the protagonists of each game. So I kind of feel like maybe that's more where you're going to get more answers specifically because to the Klaus trilogy thing, which they put out in a statement right before this game came out. It's weird because Klaus is not mentioned in this game. He's very vaguely alluded to in a post-game quest with Nia. And the Conduit's not in the game at all. The Conduit's not mentioned. Again, it's more directly alluded to or means talked about by Nia. But again, like, the things that made this happen are very brushed aside. Like, there's 2 worlds, and then they, an experiment happened, and now they're coming together, and that's kind of it. Like, they don't. I think the deliberate trying not to overwhelm newcomers, is a little bit of a detriment because. Oh, okay. Because like people who are coming into 3 have no knowledge of 1 and 2 might just be like, wait. What do you mean worlds split apart now they're coming in? I mean, I guess it's cool, whatever, but it's like there's a whole lot of context that's sort of like missing from 3. I think, and it was done in the name of like, let's not. Okay, like imagine you're brand new to 3. Yeah. And then they start throwing, there was this scientist named Klaus, and there was this thing called the Conduit, and I'm like, and you're like, wait, what? Who? What? Where? When? Why?
Yeah, I like even do like a recap type video. But the thing is, like, I think that's part of the mystery, especially for veterans. I think they like doing that, like, slow kind of like creep into like we're dangling a carrot in front of you, like how is this connecting and stuff, and like it usually doesn't come till the end where it's like, oh, we get a little bit of the answers. Honestly, going back and refreshing on the endings, I think like 1 and 2 might have given you a little bit more pull behind, like pulling the curtain back to show you what's going on. Especially like 2 probably gave you like the most larger picture information. So let me see if I got this right now, because like I feel like I always forget this stuff. So the experiment like on Earth when they built the stations in space, they found the conduit, and they were doing like experiments, and then that's when like the Trinity processor was built to like govern it or something.
By the way, all of what you're saying here is not in the game.
Oh yeah, I just want to
from a model kit.
Yeah, this is like I just want to like make sure I understand this for my own thing. This is so people listening like, what the heck? This might have been why they chose not to put this in here. They activate it. It splits the world in 2, but also opens like portals to infinite amount of alternate dimensions. One of those worlds is Xenoblade Chronicles world. The other is Xenoblade Chronicles 2's world, and Klaus got split in 2 as well. Half of it is in one world, half is in the other world, and then like things go down and stuff, and like at the end of 1 and 2, when like Shulk kills his left or right side, I forget which one, which is becomes Zanzo, whatever, kills that one, so that's the end of him. He dies in 2 as well, and they do their whole thing, and like the conduit vanishes and goes to an unknown dimension apparently. Like this is how like crazy it starts to get. And it's like this is why I feel like they don't want to burden newcomers with that, because it's too much. I do think the simplicity of like, yes, there were 2 worlds, and I think you come across like, oh, well, Melia's world is the Xenoblade world, Chronicles 1 world, and Nia's world is Xenoblade. I think that's enough for the layman layman's terms, it's like, oh, these are the two other worlds. They came together. They're going back. They're splitting together. I don't really need to know about the conduit. I don't need to know about Klaus, why like the worlds were split and stuff. That could be saved for maybe a new storyline. Like they could revisit some of that stuff and maybe not Klaus's stuff, but like the ramifications of the experiment or whatever. Like they could do that, but in my opinion, I think it was a little bit too much to burden people. And this has been Nintendo's MO. Like, as a Zelda, you notice the Zelda fans, they never like, you need to play the previous game. Like, I'm just calling out Tears of the Kingdom. We were thinking so much of Breath of the Wild 1's like is going to be important to it. They'll probably be like superficial things that you'll need to know, but otherwise, like, you didn't need to know like the champion storylines or anything like that. You're just gonna they want you to enjoy the game as it is standalone.
Tears of the Kingdom is going to be like its own. It will not be heavily reliant on. Well, not that there was much story in Breath of the Wild, anyways. But that's a big thing.
I mean, I also think it has to do with like when the game takes place. Like the clouds, it's like ancient history. Like we don't know exactly how many hundreds of years this game is, but there is dialogue between Melia and Nia that I think Melia says to Nia, like, you've been helping me through the centuries or something, or like
there's a line that says 1,000 generations or so. So they kind of pull like a Star Wars on it.
Yeah. So I mean, at this point, it's like Nia like knows it, but it's like these people don't care. I mean, because it's like it happened so long ago. It's like a myth at this point, and she's the only one, and like they're the only two who know it. So like, what's the point in talking about it? Like that's kind of the sense I got in some of the dialogue, where it's like, let's just put this in the past. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah,
and that's the way it is.
And again, to reiterate, maybe okay. So maybe if someone's coming to spoiler like, hey, I beat 3, but I'm still like in the dark. Let me break the facts. This came from a model kit. The Siren model kit in the early 21st century, in other words the early 2000s, in a dried lake bed in Africa, they discovered the conduit. Yes, this is Xenoblade. I'm not talking about Xenosaga. A machine of some sort was found called the conduit, and then the united governments of the world discovered that, well, okay, this thing is really powerful. So what they did is they built 3 beanstalks, which are surface to low orbit elevators around, and they built a low orbit ring around the Earth, put the conduit up in space, because they said if they activated it, it could have catastrophic consequences. 3 kind of confirms that. Anyways, at some point, the Saviorite rebels, which is in Japanese, the Salvatore rebels, a direct reference to Xenosaga again. There was like basically a rebellion from a faction of the United Government. Earth was pretty much climate destroyed almost at this point, as they allude to in 2. Klaus wanted a solution to humanity. Now, the conduit is this machine, and it siphons energy from a higher dimension. That's ether. If you see, there's ether cylinders all in the game, whatever. They don't know where they basically don't really know too much about it. It just siphons ether energy from a higher dimension. Klaus activates it. Basically, he's trying to like save humanity or whatever. That caused a huge reaction, of course. And again, it splits his body in 2. Half of him stays on Earth. The other half goes into some other dimension. This is very id, ego, super ego. Again, going into all kinds of like, the philosophy stuff. So anyways, point is that on Earth, Klaus remakes life, and then that's the story of 2. He makes the core crystals, he makes the things, he basically has this whole, explain it in 2. So he basically restarts all life that was destroyed on Earth when he activates the conduit. The other half, his ego side of his brain, becomes Zanza. And Galea is also there, his person he would work as co-worker, his possible love interest. And they become Bionis and Mechonis, Zanza and actually not Galea, Maineth. Anyways, that's Xenoblade 1. Shulk kills the bad guy at the end of Xenoblade 1. And that causes Klaus, the scientist who started all this, to also die in Xenoblade 2 back on Earth. And then, as we discover out in this game, basically the pocket dimension created from Xenoblade 1 is now coming back to basically merge with our universe. And that's sort of kind of what happens with Xenoblade 3. So it's it's a lot of stuff to take in. And I personally, I just myself, I would just feel like if I was playing 3, I'd be very questioning, like, okay, wait, how did this happen? I'd actually want to know, but I kind of see why they didn't go into all the nitty gritty detail, because it would just be, man, that's a lot of info. And Stealth pointed out too, it's like, it kind of doesn't matter to the game's world or story in 3, because it happened so long ago, and it's just so in the past and all this other stuff, and it's like, this is for like lore hounds only kind of thing at this point. So I don't know. I guess the better question would be, how do people who've only played 3 exclusively, how do they feel about it? I'm actually very curious, because like I would be driven nuts wanting to know about all the things that like Melia and Nia tease in their quest lines.
Well, that's
I have seen like Twitch streams of a lot of people who like played the first 2 games but like really didn't remember them. And like I guess a lot of like the cool like aha moments of like understanding the connections between the games are missed, and it's just like they just move on. And so it's not something they don't really know what they're missing.
There's a shocking amount of people who play 2. They beat 1. They beat 1, and they get to the end of 2, and when they have that tease where you hear Shulk's line from the end of the lost boss battle in 1,
it skips it.
They hear it, and they're just like, huh?
They don't get it.
Everyone in their chat has to like tell them, "Oh my god, you missed it." Oh, I did.
It's nice payoffs. I also think it might be partially to like encourage people to go back and play the other games. It's like one of their little ways to like, it won't impede your understanding, but if you'd like to know more, go check out the game. Or like when you see a movie of a popular book, it's like, well, did you want to get more information? Go read the whole book and get like the whole story. I kind of view it that way. For me, someone who maybe didn't remember 2 as well going into 3, I probably like, I picked up on a few things, but my biggest question is probably will be answered in DLC, as you kind of like speculated, Simmons, about the artwork, is like the ending when the worlds go back to being split and it reverts to the moment they split. We're assuming it went back to the moment that they merged, they undid that. So like we've gone back 1,000 generations now. It's like, so where were the casts of both games? Like, where they should still be alive, because that moment in the beginning was only like how many, like 10 years, something amount of years after the ending of their games or whatever. Because like Future Connected was only 1 year after Definitive, and so how many, like Melia? Yeah, I didn't know Melia can live long, but like
it's actually alluded that it's only like 10 to 22 years.
So whatever it is,
of 1 and 2 to the start of 3.
Okay, so my question is like, where are, in Melia's world? It's like, okay, the rebuilt Colony 9, it's like, okay, well, where's Shulk? Where's Fjord? Where's like Ryan? Like where are them? And then on the other world, it's like, okay, well, where is everyone else there?
So
like, and will the DLC answer that?
Here's my theory about that. At the start of 1, you see Noah running as a kid, and the clock freezes and time freezes, right? And that's the merging of the worlds, and that's when the whole origin thing starts. That's only 12 to 20-ish years after the end of Xenoblade 1 and 2. Everyone's alive, and I think the DLC is going to be about Shulk, Rex, all those characters 20 years past the first and second game. And then you're going to see how they lived and reacted and lived out their lives in that frozen time, in that endless now. And then what happens at the end of 3, at the post credits, is basically they get rid of the endless now. Everything is basically restarts. I think Origin more or less restores the world and characters through its memory banks into like the second after, the second right after the worlds, right when they hit. So it's going to be like time never passed. It's like this blink of an eye thing, right? So in a sense, I think it'll be like this weird thing where it's like we're going to have a DLC that's going to be about Shulk and Rex and whatever, but it's not going to be after 3. It's technically going to be before 3. At the very beginning, it's going to be about the founders, the people who started, the city, the origins of the city, and basically like figuring out how to like set in motion the things that would have eventually come to their conclusions in 3. But I think we'll see. Okay, so where was Rex and Shulk and whatever? We'll get that answer. Yeah. But I don't think.
Hope so.
I don't think it's going to be put. It's going to be like what happened to the original Rex and Shulk right as the worlds collided, more or less. And we'll see how they lived out their life, which you can see from the statue and the founders in the city and yada yada. And then, it'll basically it'll also serve as sort of like, okay, so when the world restarts, you'll get an idea of where they were, because again, like the whole crux of this game takes place within like basically a second or a minute. So
it's Contact, the movie Contact.
I guess so.
You
Yeah.
see her journey. We only recorded that.
Yeah. So I think we're kind of like going to get like, it's going to be like a weird, like, yeah, we'll see what happened to them, but it'll be in the past, but it's also going to also be in the future because of how the post credit works. So it'll kind of like answer both questions at once in a weird sort of way. That's my brain theory. That's my big brain on it.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people kind of theorize the DLC be able to play as the founders, but it's like that image of the sword. It's like, I don't think this is going to be a story that's like kind of like post game DLC, like a post game quest where like all of a sudden like Noah gets an idea. It's like, hey, let's find these ancient swords, and then it's kind of like that. I do think like, yeah, it'll have to have Shulk and Rex, but like many people were a little upset with the ending, that it kind of ended on a somber note, that like the world split apart. Do you think like after the end of the DLC, like the worlds will come together, or do you think that they're actually going to stay apart still? Because I know like a lot of people were upset about that.
I don't think we're ever going to get an answer to that.
Yeah.
I think they're just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, my question then is like the DLC, are they going to have to make new environments for it? Like, it's going to be like, yeah. Like,
that's why there will be some new environments. There will be some, but like they're not going to, because a lot of people like it has to be post game. It has to be post game. I'm like, okay, so think about it. If this is post ending, you need to create a map just for Xenoblade 1's world and a map just for Xenoblade 2 world. You wouldn't theoretically, you couldn't use any of existing maps at all in a post game DLC content. They could do that. Mom's crazy, with their, they are crazy enough to do it. But part of me is just kind of like, realistically speaking here, like Torna used Gormont and then like rearranged it and remixed Gormont and then had brand new Torna content. And that's what I think is going to be. We're going to get like a landmass that's not in the base game, and then we're going to get like at least one of the areas from 3 remixed and changed up a little bit, but it's still, they can still use the core data of that map, and it'd be like 2 landmass areas, 2 loaded zones in the game is how I'm figuring the DLC is going to be. And it's not, I don't think, because again, like how would you even begin to reconcile how that's going to work, where it's like, it's post game, so that means you're going to use the core cast of this game, but it's like, then you have to create a whole map for 1, a whole map for 2, Xenoblade 1, Xenoblade 2 world. And then you have to decide how would the cast, I mean, if you want to go real fanboyish, it could be like, hey, Noah, Uni, Lands are going to meet up with Shulk, Fiora, and Melia, and they're going to have those 6, and then you're going to have the other 6, with like Nia, Rex, and Pyra in 2's world, and the whole DLC is going to be like, you'll split between them. You'll go from, it'll just like load from one area to the other story-wise. And I'm like, that sounds cool, but like, I want to be a little more tempered with my expectations here. Like, it's probably going to be something where they can reuse at least one landmass area from the base game.
Yeah, I'm curious if they have Shulk, Rex, and anyone else playable, like, will they be like heroes, like work as like a guest character, or will they be part, as you said, if they don't reunite the 2 main groups, like, will they still want to do the 6 characters playable at all times? And like, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. My other question is like, won't they have to do like a small time skip, because they're all little kids again, like the main characters? Like,
well,
yes,
that's right.
They have to change. Like, they have to be like smaller. Otherwise, it's gonna like there need to be a little bit of a time that passes, or it'll be a little.
Yeah, or they just don't use those original 6 characters at all, and
which is where my brain is.
Yeah, they either go with like the casts of the older games, as they're maybe like dealing with the fact that the worlds are about to collide, and they're working together potentially, or it's the founders that we're playing as, or some combination.
Yeah, there's 6
I mean,
founders,
yeah, I
and
mean
then a
that,
mysterious 7th. So,
yeah, I mean that's the only way it works if like we're doing a story that's like before and not post game. That's like the only way it works because yeah, they're kids. So
unless, like you said, they do like a time skip, like 10 years after the post
Yeah.
credits of 3. I'm like, there's 6 founders. To me, it's like it's very obvious what's going on here. I'm like, it's going to be like probably going to be.
and one of the founders looks like Shulk.
Yeah, like it's probably going to be Shulk, Rex, Nia, Fiora, Melia, maybe not Melia and Nia, but like it'll
whoever they can get the voice actors for.
it might be Nia. Nia and Melia might actually be there, but I'm like, and I think we'll probably see most because again, like there's however many people in 1 and 2 is a lot. You know, they both have ensemble casts, and I don't think we're gonna be bringing playable versions of like everyone from 1 and everyone from 2, and like I don't think we'll be playing as Ricky or Dunban or anything like sadly. Or Morag or Zeke probably. My hope is just that Morag and Zeke are there, but like, yeah, part of me is just kind of like you're gonna play as the 6 founders, and in 2 of those are gonna be Rex and Shulk, and one's gonna be like Noah, like original OG Noah or something. So
I mean, there's also one other way to solve this is we play as Poppy, who doesn't age and is just around.
That's true. Well, there's that, and then there's the DLC for the new Hero Quest coming next month.
Oh, yeah.
She's an artificial blade,
Yeah.
and she speaks Nopon, very well. I'm like, okay, this is probably going to have teases for the DLC because that is very specifically a two's world related thing. Artificial blade is something that would only make sense to someone came from two's world. So that actually kind of has me a little excited that maybe the 2 heroes they're adding for this DLC update in October and the one early next year are going to have maybe some vague tie-ins to the upcoming DLC. Because like, an artificial blade is 2, and I'm going to guess that the next hero is going to be a healer class for Kevesi because there's 2 healers. There's literally Uni and Baldi. And there's no other healers for Kevesi. They're all Agnian. So I'm going to guess a Kevesi healer from Kevesi will be like the second. And I'm kind of excited to think, what if this ties into the upcoming DLC, like their backstory a little bit. So that's kind of exciting there for me for that aspect. But
let me so let's come back to more Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Less about like the speculation about where it's going to go, but maybe one of the most pivotal moments in the game. This question comes from Chris Park. For the Xeno fans, what is your most defining moment of the game? And is it the end of Chapter 5, start of Chapter 6? Apologies for calling a 3-hour movie a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I consider that whole like cutscene where they're in the prison and then they get captured, and then the vocal track hits through like the beginning of Chapter 6. I consider that probably one of my favorite cutscenes like in Xeno history, for just like the emotions and like you're like, how are they going to get out of this? And then they don't get out of it, and then you're like, I have to play the beginning of Chapter 6 to see what happens. I thought like. I know, like, for me, it's like I liked Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but I felt like I was kind of going through the motions a lot, where it's like I kind of in my head, okay, this story is like very linear. Like I understand like what everything is now, and like what we have to do. And that was like the potential of like a main character dying, like through like a wrench in it for at least a moment. That was very interesting. So yeah, that was like the moment where it's like, okay, now I'm gonna have to really just 100% this game, and I got addicted to it, and yeah, so that was definitely my moment.
Can you read that question again, Mike?
Oh, sure. Let me read it exact as it is, because they actually, I kind of reworded. So this is again from Chris Park. For the Xeno fans, what are your most defining moments of each game? I want to keep it just to this game, because we already kind of talked about the other ones. So what was your most defining moment from this game? And is it the end of Chapter 5, start of Chapter 6? And they said, apologies for calling the 3-hour movie a moment.
Okay, I almost thought for a minute there he was talking about Xenogears Perfect Works. Because Xenogears was supposed to be a 6-part game series, and Xenogears is the end of episode 5 of 6, and I almost thought he was making a really weird deep cut reference.
Okay,
but then it hit me. I'm like, oh no, because 5 is the prison sequence and the big. I'm like, okay, he's talking about that. And I can answer that question, really quick for every moment.
I feel like you had an interesting take on the Chapter 5 ending thing when you were telling me about Simmons.
Oh my God, it's Golgotha from Xenogears, 100%. Like it's a redone moment from Gears total. But no, the defining moment for me was when Metalface starts to talk for the first time in Xenoblade 1. Great cutscene. 2 is the opening cutscene of Chapter 9, where you get the dialogue-less backstory to Amalthus. And then this game, the most defining moment to me, and it's going to be no one else's, is at the very, very in the end scene. There's a moment where Noah's looking at the sword, the Lucky 7, and he's looking at it, and he has his, I call it the Top Gun moment, and he throws it off the thing. And for me, that was the most. I actually got kind of almost choked up there a little bit, because I was like, he's finally he's letting it go. This is a meta commentary, because everyone in my chat, when I was streaming it, was like, I don't get it. What's he doing there? Why did he throw the sword? And I'm like, it's Takahashi finally letting his story go. He finally got through his grand narrative, and he's finally letting it go. The whole Ouroboros. And then the immediate dialogue, when he's talking to Mio on that cliff, is almost also to me kind of meta, where it's just kind of like, thank you for being here with me through all of it. It's the next lines. And I'm like, he's looking at the sword. It's like this, his story is like an Ouroboros, an endless now, a never ending journey where he's been trying to tell this story for 20 odd years, and he keeps retelling it, through Gears, through Saga, and now through Blade, and he's finally reached the end of it. He's found success. He's found a huge audience, and people love it, and he's got to the end, and he finally throws it off the thing, and he's letting it go so we can. And that follows into the letter he wrote for when the game came out. This is the end of the Cloud storyline. It's like, I am finishing what I started. And I'm finally going to. I'm finally. He's not saying it's the end of Xenoblade, but this specific saga, the storyline, if you will, he's finally let it go. And to me, that was the biggest moment for me. And there's other great moments too. I really like the moment where Uni's hands are shaking and Tyon gives her this herbal tea. I actually really, really like the cutscene where Mio and Noah are Mio's washing dishes and drops one, and then there's this whole conversation where she's just kind of like, I don't have a lot of time left or whatever, and it's kind of it really hits you hard, she's terminal, and no one really understands quite what it's like to live under those pretenses, and I really like that. Those are 2 other really big moments, story wise, beat for me. But for me, the big defining thing for me was him finally was throwing that sword off, at the very end in the end cutscene, and I was like, wow, it felt personal. A meta, but personal, finally letting go of this grand. I finally got to tell my story.
It's a really good way to view that. Yeah.
I mean, I would say another one I really liked, and this, it's not necessarily, well, I guess it is a cutscene, where it's in Ashira's Ascension quest, where we find out, she's basically at the end of her 10th term, she's reliving getting beheaded every single time. And she knows, she feels how she died previously. And then, her and Uni have this conversation about, I won't spoil that, but,
we're in spoiler mode.
It's spoiler mode. We gave the warning.
But it's it's just really impactful in terms of there's some deep stuff, this world is really messed up.
Oh yeah,
and when we just get that from, I mean, some of the heroes are a little bit more lighthearted. Like, you know, I forget whose Ascension quest it was, where we throw him in the hot spring because he needs to relax. But
Yeah, Ezerd, I believe.
Yeah.
Ezerd, yeah.
Ezerd.
But then there's other ones that are like this is very, very serious. I mean, there's some joke elements, but for overall, like there's some very, very serious writing. You know, throughout this entire game. That's you know, I don't think a lot of people are necessarily used to when JRPGs done so well.
Yeah.
Ashura reminds me a little bit of Triton, because Ashura is basically, she's cursed with remembering all the time, like, because most people don't have their memories when they get reborn, but Ashura does, and she has memories of getting like beheaded and stuff, so that's like hard. And Triton is a consul, so he doesn't have this whole like dying and reborn thing, but he's been alive so long, he's basically developed dementia almost, or just like extreme memory loss. And that one's actually kind of heartbreaking too, a little bit, even though it's silly. It's all about like a food item or whatever, but like
but he also like remembers all these people who have died, and like he lives where everyone else dies, and that also is kind of like I kind of got like a Marvel kind of thing, because that's like a story that they do with Wolverine a lot, in terms of like him staying alive and everybody else around him dies, and that kind of did hit me hard too.
Yeah, I think the most surprisingly, like what the F quest was Gondor's.
Oh, yes.
With the big Turkin. Because you think, oh my god, this is such a goofy side quest.
Yeah.
And then it gets real dark real quick.
Yeah, it does.
and you start feeling real bad for you know, a jobber enemy class.
Yep.
And then those Turkin kids just hang around, you know.
Yeah, they actually go to the castle and you can talk to them and stuff.
I forgot about that. I kind of blocked that out. That really was sad.
Yeah, it's like this horrible. It's just like, you know, baby, you know. I'm like, oh my god, when he just starts talking about like, you know, please help find, you know, chance for my children, they can live so they could live in peace. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there definitely been other JRPGs that have tried to do like dark and like disturbing stuff throughout, but I mean, I think this was just done very well. Like not quite the same, but the last time I felt like, I mean, I still think this example is better, but like the last time I felt anything like where this world is so bleak and like we're just seeing how hopeless and terrible it is for all people who live here, was Shadowbringers, the expansion for Final Fantasy 14, where like the world's just like completely screwed and people die in horrific ways like every hour basically, but this one I think they did I think they do a little bit better job in this one of like going more into like they keep pursuing it, whereas the Shadowbringers moves on. There's other things to deal with. Where this is the core theme of the game. We're sticking with it, and even through like random person's ascension quest, you're still seeing how this affects everything. For me, obviously like the chapter 5 ending was a big deal for me. I like that twist. Like I really bought into, like, we were losing a main character. I'm like, yay, they have the guts to kill a main character. I love when they do stuff like this. This is great. Although I think it's going to be undone, but like, I'm still believing it for right now. For me, it wasn't necessarily like it gave me hope for where the game might go in terms of like boss mechanics. Was when you first fight M and they and she uses her ability to control people, and you're like, oh crap, like here we go, we got a gimmick boss fight, like this is gonna push like yo, how do you beat this? And then like Tyon comes up with the way, like I was like, oh man, like it was like a Naruto fight where you're learning out like the jutsu power, like how do you solve the jutsu power? And I was like, I love this trope, but like it never really comes back. I was like, I wanted like more of that so badly.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty powerful too, like the Ethel Kamaravi fight.
Oh yes.
Where, you know, they obviously have one final epic battle, and then, you know, you just see their mechs there as like this monument of that, and yeah, I thought that was pretty powerful too. But yeah, like to what Simmons said, there's not a lot of like twists in this game, where you get those cutscenes where like we're like, whoa, I can't believe this has just happened. There's not a lot of that. For me, it's more like emotional stuff when like the music hits, and the dialogue is really good. It's not like chapter 5 is like the one twist in this game I felt like.
Yeah.
But the rest of it's like emotional music and writing.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah. There's some things you were mentioning about the ending, and I think they might come up in this next question about like details and stuff about what characters were up to. This comes from Asbo Sapruder. They want to give us ending spoiler warnings. This is a spoiler mode, so, you know, we're just being redundant here. This is probably something that will be talked about anyway, but I wanted to ask the panel's thoughts on the ending. I overall liked it and definitely got misty-eyed, but I also felt like the final stakes weren't communicated very well. For the most of it, it just seemed that there was uncertainty about what would happen, but then in the last few cutscenes, it suddenly seemed like everyone knew they would be separated forever. And even then, with things like Tyon giving Uni the book, it felt like things would continue on just separate. Instead, it looks like everything just reset. We have all these people we've been helping throughout the game find a way into the future and learn how to grow in a post-clock world. We have the city itself. I think knowing that losing all of that progress was the price to pay would have made the final decision more impactful had it been better communicated. So, yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, honestly, like, this is a little closely tied to my biggest complaint with the game, and the villains just kind of suck. Because the whole point of the game is that Zed is basically making the world that, in a way, both Alvis and Amalthus, Zanza and Amalthus wanted. Like, Zanza was in a constant cycle of creating, recreating the world with Bionis.
And he didn't want anyone to leave, right? That was the whole thing with the Telethia, right? Like,
well, he was basically just like making food for himself.
Okay. I thought it was something about like he wanted to keep everyone there, and like they were dared to leave.
See, Elvis talks about that, where he's just like he what he really actually thought was companionship, and he actually feared being forgotten. It was almost like he was this god.
It was like it was a god thing. He didn't want like his worshippers to like forget and leave. Yeah.
So so there's that, and then Amalthus wants to keep the world in sort of this perpetual like warlike state, because he's the one with like that goes into the whole story of that with how he controls and distributes the core crystals and basically controls the flow and narrative of warfare in 2's world. So Zed is kind of like he's basically it's more like he accomplishes what the villains of 1 and 2 wanted, which was to create an endless cycle of violence, if you will. And his whole thing is, he says it in the boss fight a lot, where it's like, how can you know what'll happen if you restart time? If they restart time, you know, basically like Zed's opinion is that everything will just cancel each other out. It'll divide by 0, both universes go bye-bye completely. So he's like, you can't possibly, and then that's kind of like that's kind of the crux. They say it in like, I feel more like battle dialogue, or like in between battle dialogue between Noah and Zed, where he's just kind of like, you know, we don't know what'll happen, but you know, we have to, you know, we have to take that chance. We have to take that choice. You know, you've robbed us of the choice of moving forward because of your fear of the unknown. And it's a very human thing. And I get what they're going for in the sense of like how, you know, as humans, we tend to fear the unknown, and all we really want is for a moment to kind of like, we want to live in this moment forever kind of thing, right? Very, very, you know, kind of basic human understandable thing there. But like what he said in the question also kind of rings true, where it's like, okay, so everyone in this city who is naturally born is going to be gone at the restart of time. All of the progress you made is going to be gone, because we're restarting to that second before the worlds collided. So it does have this sort of like, everything you did in this game kind of didn't matter, kind of. Well, it did and it didn't. It's like, because you were stuck in an endless loop, and then you take everything back to the moment in time before they collided, which is why like there's like a line where like Gondor says like, you know you just got to do it your way, and like, oh, I might like a better name, basically sort of implying that she's aware that she's going to cease to exist. They're like, hey, in the future when everything gets restarted and you know, my family eventually becomes to get born again. She's kind of like Marty telling his parents, like, you know, hey, if a kid spills something, don't get too mad at him, you know. So it's kind of like one of those ones. Can you give me a better name, you know, in this new future or whatever? And no, it's not. It's not super convenient. It interestingly enough, it kind of is given more context if you do Nia's Ascension quest, which is post game. So you have to beat the game, watch the ending credits, and then start the game up again. Go to that last save, go do Nia's whole thing, and at the very end of Nia's quest, there's like that conversation she has with Mio about like when the worlds collide, everything's gonna like she kind of like Nia's aware that everything's gonna kind of get erased. And I've seen some discussion online about like I feel like that should have been in the main game, kind of like more obvious, sort of like, look, we're going to defeat Zed, but that's going to cancel out everything in this world. So I kind of get what they're saying a little bit, and it is one I do, and again, to me, like it kind of just ties in a little bit of the weakness of the antagonist in 3 compared to 2. Where it's like 2 is very obvious what's going on at the end. It's very clear. It's very clear what's happening. It's very clear what you got to do, kind of thing. Like 3 is just kind of like the worlds will come back together, and then there's all this like, yeah, like that conversation with Uni and Tyon about like, oh, I used all ink and pen and stuff from your world, and it's like he doesn't even know what's going to happen when the world split again. He doesn't know that they're literally going to go back to being kids who've never heard of each other, kind of thing. I think that's just sort of like, to me, if anything, it's just sort of like the post credits is like trying to almost like add a little more bitter to the bittersweet about it, where it's like this whole everything they planned for and everything they all that whole ending is like it kind of almost doesn't matter. But then you get like this weird echo. Noah hears that weird echo of the flute, so he hears like this memory that shouldn't exist from a whole timeline, a whole life or many lives that he lived and then was kind of erased, but he hears this weird echo, and kind of follows it or whatever. So I guess in a sense I kind of agree with him, but I guess it doesn't bother me too much.
Yeah, there's no Jin in this game. Jin, had complexity. Why did a hero go bad? Could he possibly become good again? There was a lot of like interest in Jin, as a character, a lot of growth, a lot of interesting moments. Zed is like watching a movie, like the whole game. And then you come and find him at the end, basically. And the other Mobius, like some of them have deeper, but you don't know a lot about their backstories. Some you do and some you don't. Like they're very superficial villains. And you're right, none are as good as those in 2. And that didn't bother me so much, but yeah, I mean, it's like I did think about the fact that, yeah, like we're getting this very emotional ending, and then everything gets reset and it doesn't really matter. And then it's like all that happened in like the blink of an eye, and that's just, and in a way that just makes the ending really, really sad. It's like you did all this and now it's just, you stopped a really messed up world. But to stop a messed up world, you have to stop existing, and reboot it. And that I kind of like that in a way. But yeah, I mean, the final boss fight, it's great how like all the heroes show up to help out, and that's cool. But like I didn't hate, like I hated Shania more than I hated Zed.
Oh,
Shania was horrible. And just nasty, and like I felt more negative emotion towards her than I did Zed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
She had so much more development, especially if you did the other quest, like the essential one that like you get more of her. I was like, wait a second, that extra stuff about her I think was pretty essential. But I'm with both of you. Like I felt like Zed was kind of like played out a little too samey. And like very little development, like just a typical villain thing. Like I was like at the end of it, I was like, this is like this motivation stuff. Like I feel like I just saw Xenoblade Chronicles 1 again, where it's like I didn't want things to change. I just like and like if you do this, you're gonna undo or like your uncertainty. And I'm like, yeah, we've retreaded that. This may have done it a little bit more elegantly because of like the writing was better, and I think that I think they had better characterization for the main characters. But yeah, that whole ending was just like super flashy, over the top, awesome looking, but like in terms of stakes, Yeah, I wasn't fully aware. Like, it started to dawn on me at a certain point, like, oh yeah, we're gonna undo this, but like they didn't really take anything away from me, and I appreciate it when it hit. I think maybe that was kind of the point. Was like, we want you to like on your own realize what you're doing here at this moment without just telling it to your face, because it's going to be more meaningful. It's going to be more emotional when you feel that. And in fact, like when you're saying like a whole world vanishing is like shades of Link's Awakening right there at the end when you're waking the Windfish. It's like, yeah, like all this will be undone if you do that. And I think that's really great. But I did think this game had a villain problem. Like the only one was with Yorin, like. And even that, when he became Mobius, it was so comical at that point. It was like, you're like comic, like you're just goofy. Like, I'm not really feeling the stake. For the characters, I feel their pain when they're dealing with him. But the one, I forget their name, Noah's mentor. That was the
Chris.
one. Chris. That was the one I felt had the best potential. And it's like, it's over so quick. I was like, that should have been developed more. And I felt more that bond and that like kind of conflict with Chris and Noah at the end there, leading to that part than any other like villain in this game, even like Yorin, because Yorin's depiction as a Mobius was so goofy to me.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really like see Zed. Like Zed has no interaction with the party at all throughout the entire game, and like in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, you fight Malos and Jin multiple times throughout that game, kind of like building up to their final fights. And it's more impactful because like they're an active participant, you know, in the story. I never felt like Zed was like a super active participant. Like, and a lot of the Mobiuses were, but some were better than others. Like Jorin, I mean, yeah, it was pretty goofy. How like he was reborn and then he was evil and then like he saw his ways and then he ascended to heaven or something like that. And it was just a little bit more goofy
about that.
Yeah, I mean it was just a little goofy. And like Shania, like Shania was a horrible, like she ruined lives. Like if she was the final villain, I would have felt better about it. I would have had more emotion of like, yes, I want to defeat you, than I had with Zed, and yeah, that was just a major problem.
Yeah, Zed is a basically a recreation of Udo from Xenosaga, like conceptually. So I kind of get what they're going with there, but here's my ultimate thing: is that Udo didn't work for me as, I guess he's more antagonistic in Saga, less outright villain. But it didn't work for me in Saga. It doesn't work for me here. A collective consciousness of negative emotions breeds a villain. To me, it's just shades of like, I don't know how to write. I don't know what to do for villain. I don't know. A bunch of bad thoughts came together. Like, it's like Calamity Ganon, where it's just like, what's Calamity Ganon? He's this big fart cloud that sits over Hyrule Castle. He's just all the malice and hate. And then you defeat it. I'm like, great. Like, forget all that character backstory from Waker and Ocarina. He's a cloud. He's a big evil cloud. He's of anger, and then we got to take it down. Oh, all right.
This might have been the opportunity, I think, and maybe this was why they're scared to take this chance. Is like working in something with like Klaus here potentially, like this one last like remnant to like have like an aspect of him, but like again that would have demanded understanding, which they didn't. We'd already covered this. I think that might have been the potential there to have like a really good villain and their motivations, and like maybe they weren't the villain. They're from their perspective, they are doing this for good, and like this is like their last option. But obviously the toll was too high to pay.
Yeah, like I was thinking, like, what if it was like Zan's, like Zed's my first name and Zan's is my last, or if it's like, so it's really like something like in the Batman movie with like Robin at the end, like my last name is Robin.
Yeah.
Or if they like just tied it in that way, maybe. But yeah, I just thought like Zed was just weak.
I would have been okay with like the fact of like if Zed was one of the people working and building Origin originally, like just like
you told me about this.
That would have been cool.
And basically he freaked out over the potential of the universes canceling each other out, and he was like, I can't risk the universes all being erased. I can't do this. I'm going to freeze time. He was more shades of Lao from Xenoblade X, even, where it's just like, I'm going to freeze this. And then like he kind of just spiraled, because to keep his endless now going, he had to start doing this this constant like feeding of the flame clocks, this constant like feeding of like ether from the bodies and the motes and whatever, and it just kind of like spiraled out of control. And now it's been so long, it's just kind of like he mentally and physically deteriorated. That's why his skin's like melting away, and it's like he was just a human who was too afraid of Origin not working to the point that he froze to. I would have been 100% on board with that.
I really like that. I think I'm going to retcon that in my head. I actually really like that. Like I would have been like, that would have been really cool. And I'm kind of annoyed now that that's not the case. It would be like, because I'm sure they both had a team who helped them build this thing. And, it makes complete sense that maybe, there was talk like this person overheard a conversation that, maybe the worlds might disappear. And like, he had this moral dilemma, like that would have been awesome.
As a first thought that came to mind, part of me is almost hoping the DLC is like reveals that Zed is technically an AI within Origin.
Oh, kind of like
and
Elvis.
It ran the calculations, and it was basically like way too high of a risk of this not working. So it basically, creates a body for itself to stop time and do all this stuff. Because it's like a Brainiac situation, and like from Superman the animated series, where it's like, I've calculated that this won't the probability of this succeeding is too low. I'm going to freeze time to keep life going, kind of thing. Something like that. Even that, to me would have been like acceptable. I just can't buy this Udo 2.0.
The problem is, I think this is the problem with any narrative where they're trying to like hold a secret for the reveal. Or they like the boss, like the true culprit can't interact with the character, so you don't have the development. So you don't really like the it's not really a twist per se, but it's like the reveal doesn't come off. And like Zed, what their true nature, it's like there's just like we have no relationship with you. We don't like the best villains have interaction throughout, and you get to see them, and they just it just falls flat here. Like it was like also the same problem with me with forget. Anyway, it's just a common problem, and I don't like when they save it for that. And like, your thing was good. I mean, I forgot we had this conversation, Simmons. But Simmons and I had this lengthy conversation about how we could improve the main villain's motivations. He had like the engineer. I think I was like, oh yeah, what if it was like this? Like the DLC is like Zed is actually a reincarnation or something with like one of the main cast members. We don't know their fate because they didn't believe in the plan. Like Nia and Melia were telling everyone like what they're gonna do. And one of them's like, I don't believe in this plan. I'm gonna I feel like I'm gonna step in at this moment and do something. Like it was Ryan or something. Something goofy, not as goofy as that, but like someone that did that. But it was a problem for me too. Yeah, it was definitely a problem for me too. And just the weakest part.
But like I did feel like even though the villain wasn't great, and like I guess you can go either way on, whether you like the fact that, a lot of it maybe was for nothing or the fact that it was rebooted. I'll admit it. I like the fan service of seeing the Monado and seeing Poppy jump out of the computer, and seeing that picture. I like the fan service. So, you know what? All is forgiven for that.
Yeah, you got the picture, and I got my my cutscene, the flashback to Xenoblade Chronicles.
That picture was straight. That really, I mean, we could talk about it, right? That really, I was kind of like surprised at how many like the backlash to seeing Chadosaurus Rex. I'm just kind of like, well, whatever, I guess.
I mean,
it still doesn't confirm they're all his kids either. So it's like,
they are.
I mean, they're all blades. Like maybe all he had to do was like, I don't know, like touch the core crystal or something. I don't know.
My thing is just kind of like my headcanon is like in Japan, he went like Takahashi went online and was just kind of like, he saw all these people, making all these like nasty dojins or whatever, and he was just like, how do you feel, about all these dojins being made about your product? He's like, you know what, they're canon.
There you go. Yeah.
And it was just sort of like his Yoko Taro moment.
I mean, how come Morag didn't?
I'm canonizing this.
Yeah, I mean, how come Morag didn't have a kid too? He could have gone a lot farther with
because Morag's married to Bridget. That's why.
Yeah, but if everyone should have a kid of Rex.
No.
Oh, God. That's the DLC. You find out like Rex is now a villain who started a clone army.
I mean, to sort of like pivot this into an actual conversation, there is a very big hint that Mio is Nia's daughter.
Oh yeah, and some people have even like, I don't get it as much, but I've seen people say like Uni is like Melia's daughter. I'm like, how? I don't see that at all. But like the Mio Nia connection there is definitely
because there's that moment where feels like she's about to say something and gets cut off from another character. So I kind of feel like they were kind of also Mio's core crystal is like a flesh eater core crystal, like flipped upside down. Pointed the opposite direction of Nia's. So, part of me is kind of like this feels like, and that Chatosaurus Rex pick did confirm something, which is you can have children with blades. Like a human and a blade can get together and have a child, which they never answered that in 2. They skirted around it completely. They only mention in Torna that, people used to get married back in the old days. That's it. They didn't say anything about anything else. So I guess
it's like, as you said, like when they rebooted back, maybe only like 20 years have passed, and Mio being a blade maybe would be the age she is now, or something, or something close.
Yeah, because we don't actually know the Agni inside. We never saw what was going on in Allrest when the worlds merged. We don't know when. Like, say, let's pretend Mio is Nia's daughter. We don't know when she had because in 3 they all meet at the same age, 18, 18, 19. Like Mio's like 1 year older, right? But that's easily explainable as like that's when they came out of their cradles. In the real world or the real timeline, when was Mio born? When was Tyon born? When was time we actually found out Tyon's actually a blade from the DLC pictures. Surprise, surprise. When was Senna? Why does Senna have Bridget's hair? That was the other thing. Like, I just poo-pooed the idea of Morag and Bridget, but I'm like, but Senna could be their daughter, like easily. She has Bridget's hair, so like there's interesting things there. Like we don't actually know when. In the normal timeline, when was Mio born versus when Noah's born, kind of thing? Were they at the same time, or were they only 1 year apart? Were they separated? Like, that's interesting. Like maybe the DLC will explain that. Maybe.
Yeah.
And Mio wouldn't remember, but Nia would, and it's like, do I want to?
Yeah.
Do I want to open this can of worms, or do I want to just like, what, this is a different world now, and everything's going to get reboot anyway?
Yeah, that's the question. Is like, what's going to happen after this? Like, is that going to be potentially cruel or something?
Yeah, I mean,
you're
it was
trying to be
kind of obvious with the
compassionate.
hair and the core crystal. I mean, like I just assumed, and with the dialogue in the post game, it's like.
Yeah, and then there's a line in the ending where Nia says, "I'll see you all again real soon." Like Nia almost knows that time's going to be reset to the one point.
Well, I mean, they had a way to contact each other, Melee and Nia.
They do, and they don't explain it.
Yeah, they don't explain how. Yeah, they don't explain how. Yeah,
they explain it's like through light, but then it's like
light runes, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, and then it's like they've been talking to each other for centuries. So it's like, have they known? Like they've known this has been happening for a long time, and like we pick it back up at like 300 days.
Yeah, that line, which was done so quick, like, light runes. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I was like, maybe the DLC.
Because that has nothing to do with 1 or 2. There is no explanation right now exactly how Nia and Melia got in contact with each other and built and decided to. We know Tora was involved with the building of Origin. You can see that in the little sketches and cutscenes or whatever. But
you feel like the top of his head.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, so we kind of get that, but how? I feel like that's still a big mystery, and that's probably something in the DLC I'm kind of like hoping for a little better explanation of like, okay, how did you two come to find out about each other and talk to each other? I need to know this. Yeah.
You've been talking about like some implied connections here. That aren't fully explained, that we like they're just assuming or hope the DLC answer. This last story related question from our patrons from Anthony Thornton. I asked you this too, Simmons. I think it's a question people are asking. There's been a lot of speculation. Question for the panel: just who is Riku? as he seems to have some sort of connection with Melia. So those dramatic stares at each other like there's some kind of acknowledgement. Do you think it's just like, nah, just your eyes playing tricks on you, or do you think there's something else going on there? Yeah, what do you think?
What do you think? What do you think, Stealth?
I honestly, like, I didn't even infer a connection, but I mean, I'm thinking now maybe there is, and I should have paid more attention. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what you have to say.
I don't. He's Riku, just regular Nopon, run of mill Nopon. I don't think Riku's Alvis. I think that theory's whack.
See, yeah, that's been floating around a lot because like Riku knows too much about the worlds. Like they're like, oh, Melia knows. Yeah,
he is related to Ricky either as a protege or as an offspring or a grandson. That's it.
Offspring of one of the 14 kids. Yes.
Yeah, I do not think he's Alvis or any or some part of the Trinity or something crazy like no. If he was Alvis, that would make Alvis even kind of a bigger jerk than he was in the first game by withholding the information Alvis did for so long in the first one. But I'm like, no, there's no. Like I know what they're talking about. Yeah, like there's that moment where he shoots a look at Melia. They like look at each other, and I'm like, that's because like Riku is related or a protege of Ricky. And that's how they know each other. It's not some weird deep-seated connection that he's like a reincarnation of like a super. No.
Now, it would have been funny if like there was a boss and all of a sudden Ricky or Riku came to the forefront and then just like Alvis came out of him or something like that. Like,
yeah,
no.
I'm more with Simmons on this one, especially some of the interactions he has with Manana. Like that's quite an act to put on when like you're acting like scared or something with her, or like they're like showing their like emotions together. I'm like, that seems pretty natural. I don't think there's like anything. I think at most maybe in the DLC, if they do show like what was going on in the time leading up from each side, like yeah, you'll find out like maybe Riku is a resident of the original like Melia's world, and like yeah, he was like an offspring or something, and like he was also like helping Melia with something, or maybe he was involved in the creation of those light portal thing, or like whatever things, who knows. But like that, I think at most it's just like in the DLC we'll find out they do know each other, or maybe they'll just do something dumb where like they'll flash back to that scene and like she has a memory of like Ricky or something. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's as simple as that. She's remembering Ricky, like, oh yeah, you like Nopon's Ricky, I miss him.
He didn't make the Lucky Seven. Like he was given to him by his master pawn or whatever. So he mentions having like a sensei like multiple times throughout the game. So it's like it's probably less about Riku and more about whoever was his mentor.
Exactly.
That's probably the more important question there.
I
don't think there's any. I think people are looking a little too hard into Riku specifically.
I thought it was gonna be related to like the Seven Nopon quest line where they reforge all the weapons, and you have to like go seek out that I forget his name, the legendary one, but he turns out just to be like he's not like a cook. Like they thought he was like a legendary cook, but he's really just a legendary like engineer. So he knows a lot about like the tools and how tools matter, but like all that was like their own thing, and like they all like know each other, and like it's just like it led to that. As far as I understand, that doesn't have any like big payoff where it's like, oh, this is who Riku was or anything. Like doesn't do anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you find an item of Riku's in the game, behind one of the super bosses.
I mean Ricky.
Yeah.
You find an item of his in the cave of a giant dragon super boss.
Yeah.
That you can actually cheese and get without fighting.
I did too.
By jumping up the stairs, which ends any fighting.
Yep.
If you get one fast enough, which is what I did.
I can't believe they had that oversight. Yeah. It's like, oh, thanks for this. Cool.
You know what, though? I think that oversight was necessary because they're like, okay, well, the worst thing that could happen to a player is like being on a ladder and then they get like aggroed and one-shotted off or whatever. So I think it was like in the name of not aggravating the heck out of the players.
So you mean you don't want it to be like a Soulsborne game where you'd be like climbing something and something hits you in one shot? Yeah.
Go play those games if you want that.
Yeah.
But it is funny how it does let you sneak past them.
Yeah, I know that's always been the beauty of me of these games is like what you can get away with, and I think that's maybe potentially a good segue. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about, like the narrative, before we move into like gameplay and mechanics. So our next question is about battle system.
I mean, I think I personally, I think we kind of, I mean, I don't want to speak for Stealth, but I'm like, I really enjoyed the game. As far as that, again, my biggest problem was the antagonists and the villains just kind of being I will say, I do love this game. It's probably my game of the year, probably without a doubt. But I do miss a couple things. I miss towns, like having multiple towns with multiple different backstories and cultures and looks and designs. And I love the cast, but I do kind of miss having a more varied age cast, because everyone's 18 except me, who's 19. Everyone's 18, 19, and everyone's kind of lived the same sort of life. Like they're all different personalities, but they all have the same upbringing. So I miss that a little bit, with the cast of this game, where it's like we don't have someone who's like older, has traveled the world, like you have like Zeke. You don't have someone who's kind of like this super badass, military inquisitor like Morag. You don't quite have that mix of really different people from different walks of life. But I still think the cast is as amazing. It's great in 3 or whatever. So just sort of like random ramblings about the story there for me was just kind of like, I liked it, but like, man, everyone being like 18 years old, it eventually I started to kind of notice it, where I'm kind of like, I kind of miss having different walks of life people. The city was good, but it was just like one area. So it wasn't like it helped, but like I missed having more Ardanes and, Alba Kavanach, there and Fonza Maima and Uriah and stuff like that. And Theosir Palace and Tantal. So I don't know. How did you feel, Stealth? I guess any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I really loved the game, and we honestly had similar. Like I talked about, like, man, I miss the towns in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Like throughout my playthrough, like I just kept talking about it, where it was like, I miss kind of like larger towns and like discovering landmarks in those towns that were maybe hidden or interesting, and just the design, like all the colonies look. Either it's in a cave or it's in a desert. They look very, very similar.
Yeah.
There's really no variation in terms of the look of all the colonies. So I miss that. Yeah, the villain was weak compared to 2. But yeah, it's my game of the year. I mean, I wouldn't put 200 hours into a game that, I don't do that just because, I did it because I loved it. But yeah, I mean, not every part of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was as good as 2, which is fine. But enough of it was that,
Yeah, because people ask me, well, what's your favorite Xenoblade? I'm like, I don't have one. Yeah. I feel like 3 does a lot of things better than the others, and I feel 2 has a little leg up on some things. 1, I think, definitive, it still has probably the cleanest, best UI, user interface. As much as of an improvement 3 is, there's still some weird stuff where it's like you have to go to options and then hero roster to find the description to start the hero quest, like the hero ascension quest line. Like the description hint they give you is in some other part of the menu rather than on the part where you select the hero. Like there's some weirdness to that.
Yeah,
a little bit. It's still, it's much better. Don't get me wrong, but it's like 1 definitive still definitely I feel has the cleanest, simplest AI. Best easiest to navigate kind of thing.
Oh, UI, sorry.
And the one thing I hate across all the Xenoblade games, they all have it, are these quests where you have to grind certain collectibles. And it's like they don't tell you where they are. It's like obviously you've seen them, but it's like who can remember? And like there was one quest in 3 where I didn't finish it. It was what's his name? The commander of Colony with the sword and the shield.
Oh, Xeon. Yeah.
Xeon, yeah.
Colony 9. Yeah.
So like he has a whole potato quest.
Oh my god, the potato quest.
And at the end of the potato line quest, you needed to find a legendary piece of meat from an Arden. You needed like 5 of them. And the drop rate is like 2%. And it's like spent an hour grinding grinding a unique monster that's supposed to drop them easier, and I got one. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. It's fine. I'll look up the video on YouTube. And that was like the end of like the last potato quest. And I'm like, I can't do this. So that one quest really bothered me.
There's a dish you're supposed to eat, because I did it. I think I just naturally had it just from like maybe killing it once or twice before. But like, yeah, there is like a drop rate dish you can use from Manana to really kind of help with that.
I did that too. I just had bad luck, I think.
Okay. I think I just had good luck then. Like where it was like, okay, I was able to finish it. Oh, but do I remember that?
But like those quests across all the games just annoy me, where you have to find a particular like rare item or multiple.
Yeah, that like I feel like there are definitely quality of life improvements they could still be making, even to 3. Like they made strides with it, but there's still limitations, and item tracking is one of the worst things I think they do. Having to look up all that stuff generally is not like a fun thing to do.
Yeah, they got better starting with Definitive, where they started putting little like blue exclamation marks where the item is on the map.
So I appreciate that, but like I
still they didn't do it. They don't do that for like the collection, for some of the collection ones.
You have to like make it your active quest by activating it, and if there's an item you need to gather, it will highlight it when you're close enough in proximity to it. But that's
unless it's well, no, they do it with enemies too, where I'm like, unless it's an enemy drop, but even then they kind of do that.
Yeah, they'll put an exclamation over the enemy, and again, like the enemy drops are the worst thing, because like everything else you can gather, you can just do the exit the zone, reload the re-enter the zone trick to like repopulate, but it's still RNG, like going to the Lone Palm Island or whatever in the sea. That had like there's a quest where you have to like get a few items from there, and like people were saying it was taking hours, and someone's like, just exit the, like leave that area, go to a different region, come back. It'll take you like 10 trips maybe, and it'll take like 10 minutes at most.
But still, like but
that's so yeah. And I saw someone later say the item synthesizers at the ruined colony sites or whatever that you reactivate with ether. The husk or whatever. Whatever the
Piranha's husk or Hulk or whatever.
There's
the Hulk of like the.
Oh yeah, sure. I've heard like
there's a generator there, and apparently those like will always give you like a lot of the quests, those quest items. If you just like keep doing them enough, you'll get enough of them, and like, but like it's not really told in the game, and that's kind of like still frustrating.
A little bit of Shades of 2, where there actually is a simple answer to Lost Up, but boy, do you need to go online and read about it.
And speaking of gameplay stuff, I was going to ask, how do you both feel about the tricky rooms, where you like they actually had puzzles? Yeah.
The puzzles were like simplistic, but it was kind of like fun. I was like, yeah, that's kind of like nice. Yeah.
I'll admit, like the first one in the desert, where you kind of like find like this hidden like underground ruined temple, and it's pretty big, and then it leads to like a secret area with like the person who made the tricky rooms.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool, but like I thought they kind of overstayed their welcome, as like. You know, I'm okay with puzzles, but like it's the same puzzle.
Yeah, it felt like such a minuscule toe dipping their toe into.
Yeah, although I will say there was an oh shit moment where you do one of them, the door opens, and then it's that level 105 dragon super boss. It's like, I'm heading out of here.
Yeah, it's like there's your reward. Oh, we'll be back. We heard about like some of the small disappointments we have here, and maybe some of the improvements they could have made. This next question comes from Kirby. We're switching to the gameplay here, specifically the battle system, because for me personally, this is where I find some of my biggest gripe, and I don't even know if I want to call it gripe, but biggest issue with the game comes with the battle system. Maybe not what they're talking about here, but hopefully this will let me be able to talk about it. So Kerber says, one major gameplay issue I had was how much the chain attack system trivialized the majority of the game. Knowing how to best use it makes even level 200 super bosses on hard a cakewalk. My encounter with let me stop here actually. We lose stealth. Okay, we lost you for a second, so I'm just gonna answer the question. So,
oh, sorry, you didn't lose me. The sun was bothering me.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, Dawn, you're probably editing this, like, cut to here. This will be the beginning. Cut to the beginning of the question here when I'm waving my hand. I'm gonna read it. So okay, so this one comes from Kerbu. One major gameplay issue I had was how much the chain attack system trivialized the majority of the game. Knowing how best to use it makes even level 200 super bosses on hard a cakewalk. My encounter with N and her interesting gimmick was immediately sidelined when that gauge filled up and she spent the next few minutes spinning in the air taking millions of damage. I know most RPG systems reward knowledge, but this is really pushing it. There are many beautiful battle songs I never even heard fully thanks to that rearranged Gormott theme. I don't really know how they could have toned it down. Maybe if debuffs actually procced or survivability against enraged bosses wasn't such a razor's edge. Curious to know how the panel felt about this balancing of a staple tool in the Xenoblade battle system, and if I'm alone in this thinking, maybe in the expansions we'll just get more pawn specters.
So I question what difficulty this person played on, because I played on hard, and even with the chain attacks, it would take me like sometimes 2-3 chain attacks to down an enemy. And not everyone can play on hard, but I feel like it kind of like that was what was intended with some of these mechanics, in terms of just like some of the enemies just being sponges. But overall, like, this is probably my favorite battle system in any Xenoblade game. I love the job class. I'm a sucker for a job class system. I just love the customization and and the kind of combinations that you can make. The only time where I got frustrated with it where like, depending on the composition and the amount of healers you had, if your two healers became Ouroboros while someone was dead, and you needed them to split and heal, but then sometimes you had to manually like shift to the right character, split them, and then heal. I feel like the computer was a little wonky in terms of that, but overall, like, I played it on hard, and there were some boss fights that were so hard I had to dip it to normal, and then I went back to hard. But overall, I love the combat and the battle system.
There is kind of a solution to this. That is, don't use chain attacks, like straight up. Like, it's not like the bosses actually are impossible without it. It's not to a point where it's like, okay, you have to use chain attacks to beat the bosses, because if you don't use chain attacks, the bosses are unbeatable completely. It's not like this A or B scenario. You can actually easily just play every fight, especially with Ouroboros, and you start leveling up Ouroboros stuff. It's like, you don't need to do chain attacks. I don't know if that's a good enough excuse for some people. But it is there. It is there, like, to if you want to just not use it, the fights will go on as is. The thing is like, a lot of people never figured out 2's combat system because it's so poorly explained. But 2 is quicker, but it has the same kind of issue where it's like, you know what to do.
You can stack orbs. You can stack orbs.
When you stack and break the orbs and stuff, it's like you trivialize everything in 2. People beat the hardest level boss in under a minute with like two blades equipped. Like Morag, 2 blades, one of them like being Cosmos, kills this thing in like 40 seconds. Like Cloud Sea Ken. Like, every game has always had this. It's just that, like, it was harder to figure out in 2 because of the way it's told, where 3 is, it's not hard to figure out how to break 3's battle system. It's not a mystery. It's told better, and it's just easier to get to that point. I agree with Stealth. Like, I'm like, well, you could definitely play on hard. I don't know how. I don't feel like it's trivialized with hard.
No, I mean, even like when I thought like I had the enemy low enough on health, and like I didn't even get there, doing like the full chain attack, and it's much like, you can't like start at like an enemy's half health, a boss's half health, and then do it and then expect it to die after the end of a chain attack on hard. It just doesn't work that way. The enemies are too hard hitting and they have too much HP.
Although I have seen people do like 49, 55 million.
Yeah,
I have seen that, so I'm like,
yeah.
But
I mean, there are ways, but like I feel like either way, you still have to like look up a guide to like know how to like do that much on hard. But I mean,
I don't know.
it didn't bother me.
The thing with RPGs is they all become trivialized when you get past a
That's
certain level. Like nothing's a challenge eventually.
Yeah.
So okay, that's a good. But past a certain level, this is my kind of disappointment with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and it's the way I played this game. And I was telling you about this a lot, Simmons, because I spent so much time doing hero quests, because I love going out and doing all the extra stuff I can before leaving a region. I ended up being, on average, around the end of sometime within chapter 2, chapter 3, I was averaging 20 plus levels above every single enemy, including bosses. And even cranking up to hard, there were only like 2 or 3 times I had any kind of challenge. The final boss fight being one of those, which was like, you'd expect that of a final boss fights. But like the NM fight or whatever, completely a joke to me. Like there was no, like all that tension built up because I was so overpowered. I was like, I wish, so my biggest gripe is a functional thing. They gatekeep it until you beat the game. A way to level down or just level sync so that if you're over leveled, you can still challenge things at level and enjoy that kind of challenge. I don't know why they held the leveling down until you beat the game. I would have really appreciated that, to like, you just bank your bonus experience when you level down. You could still power level right back immediately at a campsite to get back to where you want if you want to breeze through remedial enemies. But for boss battles, I lamented spending that early game doing that extra stuff because I was like, there's no challenge here. You're right. Chain attacks were like, I'm gonna obliterate this enemy using some of these chain attacks. Like, I'm just gonna like not use the chain attack and do that. So that is the first thing there that was my issue, is that like, by playing the game as I felt I desired, and as I felt the creators were like kind of intending me to play a little bit, I felt a little penalized on that front. So I don't know if you have any like response to that before I move on to my next point.
I think the easy solution would have been just for bosses, maybe just for bosses, to scale the levels. Like if you're 10 levels above the boss, it'll scale it'll just like do, just scale up, just like the level and health of the boss.
I would have loved that too. Yeah.
That's maybe one solution they could have done. I don't know, but like, there is something to be said for like, I played the game so much and so well, I feel like I should be rewarded, where it's like, if I took the time to go out and do all this stuff, I feel like I should be able to whop bosses. Like, I kind of see both sides of the argument, but it's like,
I feel like there was no reason to lock leveling down if you wanted to.
I didn't even know, like, because I was like, oh, you can level down at camps, and you're like, no, that's a post game thing. I'm like, oh,
yeah, you can only go up. Yeah, you can only go up. You can't go down, which is just weird. You should be able to, and maybe they're going to add that in an update. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I expect it will.
I guess that's for fresh game starts, because you get it once you beat the game. Yeah, and I actually did that too. That actually made getting my classes ranked up so much easier.
Oh yeah,
it's like level down to 75.
And then that was my complaint. Like, I was only like maybe 10 levels above, but I was playing on hard, so like I had some difficulty. But leveling classes never happened. Like, I stuck with the ones that they were assigned to basically, and some I got, but for the most part, like, there was just no way I was unlocking any classes for anybody else.
Yeah, leveling down to 75, go to Skull Island. That's it. Like that became like the key to it. But like, yeah, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, wow, they don't let you level down but till you beat the game. That's weird.
So that was my first thing. And I mean, obviously a simple update could fix this and remedy that. Yeah. Whether they let you level down or they just like bosses will, you could just, before you begin a boss, it's like when you do the super bosses, when you go back to their like little like tombstone or whatever that's there, you can choose options on some of them. It's like, maybe for a boss it just prompts you, it's like, would you like you're over, like, warning, you're a little too over leveled, would you like to scale it up, would you like to level down to it, like just something.
What you want, Mike, is you want them to implement expert mode from definitive edition.
Yes, pretty much that. My other issue, sorry to speed this along, the other issue was I very much agree. They did a fantastic job of making this battle system feel very like easy to understand. Everything made a lot of sense, and they like introduced it at a great enough pace with good enough explanations and ways to go back and rewatch those explanations. That like they addressed all of my issues with 2's battle system, because in the end 2 does have a very good battle system. It just didn't do a great job explaining it. I feel like they've kind of like tapped out. They've maxed out on this type of battle system. I don't know where else they go from here. And I feel like the next game, they really need to think of something different, because my issue is it doesn't feel as engaging anymore after so many hours. And I think maybe it's not necessarily a battle system problem so much as the bosses don't really get very varied in mechanics. They're very straightforward, and you're using the systems you've been taught. You're just doing what you're taught, but I felt like it lacked a little oomph in some places. Necessarily the Ouroboros, the Soul Link. While they're flashy and cool, they were basically just an extension of the normal battle system. They didn't really introduce too many unique things. I get you can switch out arts and stuff and like customize that so they become like really powerful and change their style a little bit, but functionally it's still 2 sides with 3 buttons, and you hit them when they light up, or you want to build up your link with the Soul Link, you wait for them to do a fusion attack, and that's it. There are positional still, there are little AoE fields, but like bosses generally aren't really pushing you to do a lot of stuff. It's basically you could like anchor in a spot and do stuff. Like one boss did do like an AoE thing under them, like please don't go under them. Like, oh, here we go, we're gonna get like stuff where we need to move around. I'm gonna have to switch between characters other than just like for healing purposes. But it became to a point, I hate to say this, but after about like 20-30 hours, remedial fights, auto battle. Just hit the auto battle. I'm like, I don't feel any need to do anything other than like just kill this stuff. And bosses, they don't let you thankfully they don't let you auto battle on that, but there's some of them that were so easy, I'm like, I would have hit auto battle. So I didn't feel satisfied in terms of like the range of like the battle system being pushed against you, but I applaud them for making a very good, competent battle system that's easy to understand. I think it's maybe the problem is it's really hard in 100+ hour JRPG to make the battle system that engaging the whole time. Yeah. But like, I hate to say this, I don't know how your thoughts are on this, but like something like it's a real-time battle system and it's a slightly different battle system, but sometimes this is why it may be better going in a different direction. I felt more engaged in tension and challenge and rewarding through Elden Ring, through all like the 80 hours I played of Elden Ring. I know it's a different type of game, but like, and I'm not asking it to be that, but sometimes there is a way to do it. There is another blueprint to do it, and like maybe don't go that extreme. I hope with the next installment they try something new.
Yeah, I was about to bring up Elden Ring. Actually, like, you know, I've played very little, like I've watched more than I've played. But like maybe like after your health goes down, after the boss's health goes down to a certain amount, add moves or have a mid-fight transformation.
They
like
kind of had that with a little flame on the boss life bar where they start doing
they enrage. They go berserk where they're just like more aggressive, but like mechanically they still were doing the same stuff. Like I'm with stealth here, like some kind of transformation. Like the final bosses go through phases and stuff. Like at least that was interesting. We don't really get that.
I would add more stuff back from 2 because 2 had 3 different things going on at once.
I would have taken that a little bit
because
too.
They had what were called ceiling arts, where okay, so this enemy is known for spamming summons, and if you end a combo on a dark elemental, it actually seals the enemy's ability from summoning. It was like the universal summon block. So to bring something like that back, because you had sealing arts, you had elemental combos, you also had the break topple launch smash. You also had the level 1, 2, 3, and 4 just supers generally. And as you build up and as your affinity gets better, you can actually do a level 4 super. Originally, like 3 was the highest, and then like if you get really close to your blade, you get a level 4. So there was like, at any given moment, there was like 3 different things you could focus on in 3's battle system. And this one, it goes a little bit back to 1 where it's like race to get the chain attack, initiate chain attack, and then just beat the crap out of the boss.
Yeah, and I want to say, to me, I would have almost preferred the whole battle system be around chain attack style thing, like the risk reward, the gambling. Like I think I can hit these values, or I know a like you're playing with math basically, and it's like if you're good at math and you want to go for these things, you could keep a chain attack going and like hit those really high percentages. I actually the question, I liked chain attacks in the boss fights. I wish I wish I scaled down a bit so like they didn't like do so much, but like that was the most interesting part of the battle system to me, was the chain attacks, and I wish it was fleshed out because it was a little bit similar to 2's, like the risk reward, like I'm going to go for this, I'm going to lock out this ability, or I'm going to stack these orbs, and like there's some kind of like stakes here in the battle system, whereas every other thing about the basics of your 3's battle system didn't feel like that. Now I will concede, if you pay attention to your moves, there's stuff like ability to interrupt attacks, so like you can shut down certain boss attacks before, like as they're being cast or whatever, if you react. So there is a little bit of that, but I feel like it wasn't enough.
Honestly, I'm actually and I know they've been hiring for it for another project, which is where I think that painting comes from, but like I'm honestly be down to see Monolith at least try real-time battle system.
Yeah, I would love to see them try it.
I actually would like to see it try. Now, I'm very biased to Platinum being kind of like the gold standard, but like even in Elden Ring, I played a lot of Elden Ring, but you know what I ended up doing? I ended up cheesing the hell out of it. I got the Ice Stomp, I got the Mimic, I had the level 10 Mimic, I had the Ice Stomp, and then I went to that one area with all the sleeping ant people and just kept killing them, and like I went to level 168 like very quickly. So it's like if you give me the ability to overpower an enemy, I'm one of those people who I'm like, I will always overpower the enemy if I have the ability to do so. And I even did that in Elden Ring. So, and I did it, I did it in Nier Automata with the plugins where you basically become immortal. Yeah. You'll get health back for standing still. You'll get health back for killing an enemy. You'll get health back for taking down, or like, doing a parry or whatever. So, but yeah, I love like a Ys 8. That's a good game. Real-time battle system, really fun battle system. I'd be intrigued to at least maybe see Monolith Soft attempt that, so that's kind of like going forward to the future. I actually am like, give real-time a shot, see what happens. Yeah. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
The other kind of mechanical thing that bothered me, it's more kind of with the overworld. There are a few areas that you can see that look cool, but there's no way to get to them. And then all of a sudden, for no reason whatsoever, at Chapter 7, they're paths to them are there for no reason whatsoever.
All of a sudden, this rock bridge fell. Okay.
Exactly. And there's a few areas like that. And it's like, I spent damn near an hour trying to figure out how to get there, giving up. And then you're going to tell me just getting to Chapter 7, I can go there now.
Oh, interesting. I had a few moments like that too, Stealth, but someone in the party, banter, would say, look at that. Doesn't seem like there's a way to get over there. Like, I actually had 2 or 3 points specifically that a dialogue, a character banter said, you're wasting your time. Don't do this. I took it at face value. I'm like, oh, well,
the problem
let me come back later. Yeah,
face value is a problem there because for a lot of us, that's just a challenge.
I no. So I'm with Stealth on this one. It's like I still kind of like, I don't know. I want to see. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one area in the sea that kind of is like the Leftheria Vault, like where you go down into Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to find the real sword.
People told me you can't go there until you get to a certain point in the game. Like, you just can't go up there.
Yeah, you can't. But like, I spent an hour running around that the outside of that island trying to find the way up. And yeah, that. Like, I didn't like that mechanically. Where I
did not know that was gated.
It was.
Because I found it, at the end of the game. I was like, it was like this great moment, but I was like, people are like, you can't get there earlier. I'm like,
all of a sudden, like a hill materializes where you can go up. Otherwise, it's like a sheer cliff all the way around.
And like some of the hero quests, like you're one of the Lost Colony or whatever, like you cannot go there till like the rubble's cleared when you initiate that quest line. Otherwise you can't go in there. I'm with you. Like I don't personally prefer those either, Stealth. In fact, sorry, I know you haven't played a lot of it, but like something like Elden Ring or FromSoft games do a better job of that. There will be blockades, or like there's one area you might remember, Simmons, like it's like in the southwest near like the swamp area, but it's like high on a plateau, and you're like, how the hell do you get up there? Like Moonvale or whatever it's called. Yeah. But like a quest line will lead you up there, and it's very specific. It's intentional. It's purposeful. It's not, oh, we don't want you to go there yet, so we're gonna hold it off till a certain point in the story. And you like if you go early enough, you can get there very quickly if you know what to do.
And it's not even like a story thing, like I don't know, Zed shakes the world and all these rocks
it
fall.
just happens.
It's just like, oh, you hit the chapter, now all of a sudden it's available.
I'm glad there's not a lot of that in the game though, because there's that obvious one in Millick Meadows at the beginning, when you're way up high where you first meet Gray, and then I did not know the Leftharian, the Spirit Crucible
is one of them.
I did not know that was gated off until the end of the game. That would have drove me nuts.
I ran around it 100 times. I could see up there was this cool area. And like I didn't know. Like I looked up a guide. I'm like, how? I got so frustrated. I looked up a guide. I'm like, how do I get up here? I'm like, oh, you just get to chapter 7. I'm like, okay. And it's there.
That's not very common for these games, honestly.
It's never.
Yeah, you're right. Thankfully, it doesn't happen too much. But like when it is that one time when you're like sinking a lot of time, like you were stealth, it could be a little,
like that one makes sense because that's kind of like a Xenoblade 2 tie-in thing. But the other one in the meadow is just like a unique monster. That's it. There's no other like unique thing about it other than that. So that bothered me. That definitely bothered me.
Yeah, I did felt that too. Sorry, I lost my thought. I was gonna say something else there, but I did want to ask if there's like anything else you wanted to have, like any final thoughts before we maybe kind of wrap this up. I know it was a little bit of a down there. Oh, this was like I say to maybe give a positive to some of the stuff we talked about. Like I did appreciate how it felt a little bit more like one in terms of the world design, that from almost any high enough vantage point you could see the rest of the world. I really liked having that again, where you could like see this continuous world, even though it's not seamless overworld. It's like I appreciate stuff like that, and it was nice to have that sense of feeling again, because I like that in one, being able to like look out and like, oh, that's that other, I'm gonna go there soon, I'm gonna be over there, and just a nice little touch. But I think we talked about this last time, Stealth, where I was like, there's going to be some centerpiece object in the world that you see at all times. This one, it's Uriah and the sword, and it's like the world tree in 2, and then 2 you can sometimes see the other titans when they're close together, especially at the end. But like this one, because the shape of the world's a big donut, you can actually like look out and see, real close, real faded off, you can see like other unloaded zones way off in the distance, and I do actually really like that aspect about it. Like I still think the world map design is still top tier in this game. So I hope that's something that never changes.
I mean, I did definitely like how pretty seamless it was. Like there were some loading zones, but like,
oh yeah,
there were big areas where you just go into a town. You just go into the colony.
Not what's Eurythians, or how do you pronounce it? The sea. It's not, because it's not Aerith. It's the I'm gonna look it up right here.
What, the ocean?
Yeah,
it's the ocean. Whatever.
I want to give a shout out to it because holy shit, the Cadencia region. I want to give a shout out to that region because it's basically one region of this game is the Wind Waker done better. In my opinion, I was like, yo, this is like Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild engine right here. I was like, let's go. Like, this is so cool.
And then that one zone, it's true. There's a bunch of islands, and there's actually, and there is a colony there. It feels just as big.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they can do streaming overworld like they did X on the Wii U, like, significantly weaker hardware. They could do streaming world to kind of, where it's just one map loaded to all times or whatever. But Xenoblade X is a lot of smoke and mirrors to make that streaming tech work. But the map's still great, and either way, the map is great on either one of those games. I don't think it having a loading zone really, because they're so big, you barely noticed it most of the time, at all. Like just going from area to area, like you almost don't even notice it sometimes. So like, oh, and then some of them are smart where it's like you go into the Orion tunnels and it's like, oh, it's loading in as you go into the cave.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you know? So, you know, no, like the map design, I still think is, you know, best in class in this game. So yeah. And again, I think the big one for me is just kind of like, I will again, put my foot down. This has to be nominated everywhere for soundtrack.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about
has to be.
Oh yeah.
There's so much
yeah.
work went into this, and I followed it for like a year, and I finally had vindication because it absolutely was Xenoblade 3 what I was seeing. And to know those half the credits are musicians, you know, people playing instruments for different orchestras, and like there are 6 composers, and they're split up into groups of I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 different groups, if you will, because like some of the composers work together. They individually went out and got like, okay, this guy, I'm doing my tracks, and he hires this orchestra to do it. And this composer, he or she would go out and get, you know, a whole different orchestra on their own time, because there was so much music and so many composers, and like they all went way out of their way. They spent budget on this soundtrack, and it's not as bright and cheery as 2, and some people have kind of not gravitated towards that a little bit. But I even Mitsuda talked about like, look, I know it's not as bright and colorful of a soundtrack as 2 was. It says, but it's a much darker story, and I wanted the music to reflect the tone and atmosphere of this game. So he's like, you know, I agree with him 100% on that. I'm like, yes, absolutely. You know, you can't. As much as I like 2 soundtrack, you know, I also understand why 3 is the way it is, because it's trying very, very intentionally to match the tone of the atmosphere of this game's world. And again, I don't think there's any drop in quality whatsoever from 2 to 3. Like this is the soundtrack of the year.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I've tweeted about it. I can think of 6 or 7 awards that this should be nominated for at the Game Awards. I'm not saying it's going to win or beat Elden Ring, but Monolith Soft deserves the attention. My only concern would be the panel not playing this.
Oh yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the best hope is like a nomination for soundtrack.
Nomination.
An RPG, maybe. It won't win it. I think Elden Ring will win at, say, the Game Awards. It'll win soundtrack no matter what, like, because it's Elden Ring.
And it'll probably win RPG too.
For no other reason. And the soundtrack is good in Elden Ring, but it is significantly less amount of tracks as 3. And 3 is just head and shoulders, like so much like attention and care went into all the aspects of the music in this game. There's 11,000 battle themes in this game, and like one of the best battle themes is if you fight a normal enemy in water in the ocean area in Cadenza, it's just called sea battle. But so if you fight like an elite or a named monster, battle theme's different. When you fight a regular Joe Schmo in the water in that region, unique battle theme just for that scenario. And it's amazing sounding.
Cannot sing the praises of this soundtrack enough. The first time I fought like a Mobius console, when that music kicks in, I was like, okay, I'm blown away.
And you're hearing like the choir.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. We went over, like, this is like, I thought this would be reserved for the end. We're going now. Like, this is great. To like, the touches like of all the different battle themes, like when you fight remedial stuff, like once you get heroes in there, like when I had Melia in my party and hearing that saxophone version of the Future Connected battle theme, I was like, straight into my veins. It kind of
goes back to like playing the other games. It's like the first time you hear Shifting Souls, it's like you get chills, you know.
Yeah, the Cloud Keep, right? Where like
the Cloud Keep
Souls, and I'm like, so there's like there's callbacks too, and then like some of the tracks mix, you know, like tracks from 1 and 2 together, like Uriah and the ether mining column and stuff. So all kinds of stuff like that, but it's not overdone where it's just reliant on the old soundtrack at all. No, not at all. It's definitely got many of its own things going for it. So they had a special track just for finding secret areas.
Yeah. That
like, you found this hidden spring. Let me put in this amazing unique song that's only going to play here or like other like areas. Like it's insane. Like absolutely insane. I wish many other games cared about their soundtrack the way this franchise has cared about its soundtrack.
It's definitely my front runner for sure. Like something else has to come out after now to like have a chance, and I don't know what it might be, but yeah, definitely my front runner. But yeah, any final thoughts here as we wrap this up? You want to say? Are we good?
Yeah, I mean, despite some of the criticism, this is my game of the year easily. Loved it, and I just can't wait for the next Monolith Soft project.
Yeah, go play all three.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't really need, like I said, they go out of their way to make sure this game is fine for people who didn't. But like, you're gonna get more out of this game if you play all of them.
And it's easy to get them on Switch. It's just easy.
It's nice that every Xenoblade game is on one console. Every one, none missing. Not after done.
Stop. Cease this. Cease this.
No, I'm sorry. X-Band. Scott has abandoned you.
For now.
But no, like they're all really great. Like this, if you're like me and you loved old school era RPG specifically because you loved the giant overworld journey aspect, the sort of like these games are larger than life itself, like it's like you're stepping into a whole giant world. If you like that about Super NES, PS1 era RPGs, I mean these are the extension of that. This is, if you missed that, like you just maybe haven't played RPGs in a while, you haven't really paid attention. If you like big giant worlds, big giant journeys, you like big, like you feel like you read a Jules Verne novel like by the end of it, that's what brings me into Xenoblade. And I think, if you have any sort of inkling for that, I think you really should check these out. They're really high quality stuff. They're easily some of the highest quality stuff Nintendo puts out. They're absolutely rivaling, they're on the level of other big expensive JRPGs that are made today. So it's like, if you haven't really dived in for whatever reason or another, I really think if any of the things I talked about sound intriguing, I would say go check them out. And yeah, for the most part, other than like Villains, this game mostly pretty much just met all my expectations, which were very high, very, very high. So I don't know. I like I think check it out. I don't know what the future holds. I'm gonna kind of hold Takahashi to his word. I think there will be a Xenoblade 4, but I think it's gonna be very disconnected from these games. I think there will be very, very tiny, minor callbacks.
I mean, appreciate the achievement of getting like RPGs of this quality and this size on one platform during its lifespan.
Yeah.
And I know Xenoblade Definitive Edition, was made before, but still, to have 1, 2, and 3 on one platform done like this and in one generation, you might just never see it again.
And not to mention DLCs for 2 and 3 are game size, like full game size games.
You just never see this again.
Yeah, that's off the Monolith Soft. Yeah, very nice way to put it, Simmons. About the analogy to like the old school RPGs, the sense of the overworld. That's a really nice way to put that. And yeah, I echo a lot of the sentiments there. I mean, I had a few gripes, around the nature of the battle system, difficulty, boss encounters, and a few other like minor quality of life things. But yeah, very, very impressive game, and it still satisfied what I want most out of these types of games, like that sense of freedom and exploration in these overworlds, and like the wonder you feel running across them, and what you might encounter over like this mountain, this hill, or across this desert. It was just like really great to see all of that. And the soundtrack, obviously, like all that just added up to giving me like more of what I want. But I think I definitely have like, hopes for the future. I think they will be a time to maybe change things up going forward with whatever they do, whether it's a fourth entry or they do something completely different. So I'll be very curious to see what they have in store for us. And yeah, Monolith Soft, just probably the most impressive studio at Nintendo right now. As Stealth said, like the achievement of getting these things out, and you might not see something like this again ever. But yeah, thank you both of you for lending your expertise and knowledge and your impressions from your hundreds of hours in these games for this spoiler mode. So again, hats off and thank you to you both for taking time out of your day to talk about this. And thank you to all our patrons who submitted questions to help kind of guide this conversation. And yeah, we will very likely be back in the future for a Xenoblade Chronicles 4 spoiler mode at some day.
Or DLC.
DLC will probably be first. And if it's anything like what Simmons and Stealth have been thinking about, definitely coming back for that. If we got some the old characters reuniting for that. But until next time, everyone, thank you and see you later.